What's going on, everyone? Dr. Frankie here with Denise Rai today for another episode of Love, Laughs, and Lessons. And we are in our Matchmaker series. We have an amazing couple guests here today with us, and we can't wait to jump into talking about some good stuff. But before we do that, I'm going to pass it over to Denise Rai, who's going to give them an introduction. Take it
Yeah,
over.
absolutely. Welcome. Today's guests are Victoria Joseph and her husband Ryan. Victoria and Ryan are the founders of Birds of a Feather Matchmaking, a pioneering matchmaking firm based in Chicago that specializes in relationships outside of the traditional monogamous framework. So this is including ethically non-monogamous, polyamorous, and swinger lifestyles. This boutique service caters to a national clientele focusing on major cities across the US. Victoria, along with Ryan, also provide date coaching for men, which is designed for those seeking relationships, both traditional and non-traditional, as well as supporting successful single males in the lifestyle. They are super passionate about fostering open communication and promoting healthy relationship dynamics among their clients. Before embarking on this journey, Victoria served in the US Navy for 5 years. So we want to hear all about it. We want to know how you and Ryan arrived at this point. And yeah, we want to hear all about your experience. And, I love that you're building this amazing business that champions the freedom to love authentically. So welcome, Victoria and Ryan.
Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to dive in. Thank you for a great intro. We started our journey in Japan because both of us actually served in the military. Ryan was in the Marines as well, and that's where we met. Initially, it was like at a small house party, and then his friends invited me to go Mario karting with them on the streets of Tokyo. And a few days later, I was Peach and he was Mario, and then we just been hanging out ever since then. And we met about 8 years ago. And fast forward, we started this matchmaking company a little over a year ago, even though we were matchmaking for fun anyways, but we made it a business. And it started when a matchmaker had a screenshot going around in a couple girl groups that I was in, looking for singles for a client. And at the time, we were honeymooning in Iceland, road tripping. So of course, that's when all the best conversations and thoughts come out. And I thought that'd be really amazing. I had just finished my MBA, wanted to start my own business, and I thought like bring more love into the world and have like the hybrid option to do things in person because I'm definitely a people person and be able to do things online. And upon further research, I noticed that there was no matchmakers doing non-monogamous matchmaking. And I also noticed that there was videos of matchmakers that would turn away people who were kinky. And so for me, I thought to myself, like, of course I would take on those clients. And during this research process, I talked to other matchmakers and they were phenomenal. They guided me on where to go. And that's when that's when I learned about the Global Love Institute, got certified, and then became the first certified matchmaker specializing in what I call non-traditional relationships. And this is
So
where we are now.
super cool. Now, I know that you were the first certified. Are you the first in the US? Do you know?
So
Because
kind
I
of a
don't think.
funny story with that. There are a couple other matchmakers now that are doing non-monogamous matchmaking, but honestly, we all started in the same year. Like we all kind of like coincidentally, uh, and so while I'm the first certified one, there's another one who I think had the idea initially before me, who I've later connected with. And then at the matchmaking conference, well, last year I was the only non-monogamous matchmaker, and then this year there was actually three of us. So there's a matchmaker that's located in San Francisco, and then there's another matchmaker that goes between Miami and New York. And actually, I know two other matchmakers, one in LA and then one in Atlanta too, that do non-monogamous matchmaking. So
So you were
yeah.
saying that you offer coaching, but only to men. Why is that?
Men are generally a bit more easy to coach and a bit more receiving of the the
I'm gonna take
the,
offense
the
to that.
changes. I know I'm not. Yeah, it's just that. I guess long story short, men are a little bit easier to work with,
Are
just
they?
in that sense. Just a bit, just a
There's
tad.
almost always something that men can work on. And the women that I know of, they're generally very thoughtful. They're doing their best. They are writing the profiles deeply. They're taking good photos. And at this point, I don't know exactly how to help women because I just think they're all great. I think they're doing a great job, but like there's almost always something to work with men. And so at the moment, we are just working with men, and then maybe in the future we can work with women too. But in the lifestyle or non-monogamy in general, we actually have the opposite problem compared to traditional matchmakers, where we actually have an influx of men and we need more women who are open to this kind of
Oh,
lifestyle. Yeah, so
yeah.
that's why there's more men to work with in this particular category or niche.
That makes a lot of sense.
And are they mostly heterosexual or are they also queer?
Honestly,
it's a mix.
it's
I
a
think,
mix
yeah, it goes.
of being straight and being bisexual are the most common.
I would say a great way to think about it is it's just a subset of the population. So just pick 5% of the population,
Put it in a room.
and that's what you get.
That's what you get.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Part of my application, I asked about sexuality, and a lot of men and they pick the term heteroflexible or bisexual or something kind of in the flexible rate. And then most women in the non-monogamous realm lean more bisexual too. So very heavy on the bisexuality in the lifestyle and open relationships.
So you're national, right? Your firm?
Yes.
So what cities do you notice have a more, like a greater population of ethical non-monogamy and poly peeps?
Honestly, almost every major metropolitan city has a community. The ones that come to mind, or the states that come to mind would be, there's a big community in California, which is actually where we used to live, so we're definitely aware of that. Arizona, Texas, New York,
Florida, Miami.
Florida.
Yeah, any of the big cities.
And Chicago. I want to say those are like prime places because that's often where there's like hotel takeovers, or there's just a big population of people in general. There's clubs, places to go, and so it makes it easy to make connections and build a community that way.
That's awesome. I wouldn't have some of those states I wouldn't have expected. So like
and you didn't say Seattle, and I was kind of surprised. Not
we have people.
That's a rumor.
Yeah, no, there probably is, and we haven't personally been there.
Yeah.
No, we know people in Seattle.
No, I'm saying we haven't been there, so we don't.
I have. Well, not for like non-monogamous purposes, but I have been to Seattle, and there is a community there. I wouldn't call it large, but it's definitely there. There's clubs, there's people there that connect and stuff like that. So we have a network there too.
So I'm guessing that you have a greater complexity for matchmaking because the situations can be very different, right? You could be working with a client who has a primary partner, is looking for a secondary, or they maybe have a primary, secondary, and they're looking for a third.
Yes.
Or maybe they're looking for a primary. I don't know.
Yes. So the term ethical non-monogamy, I mean, it is an umbrella term. So, but there's different dynamics within being in an open relationship, which has an emphasis on personal freedom. It means like being able to do things separately. And then there's poly, which is multiple intimate loving relationships. That's when you might have a wife and a girlfriend, or you might have multiple partners. And then the swinging lifestyle is when you have a primary person that you generally do things together with. And there are some people who do all the above. So really it can be so bespoke in that kind of way based on the communication that you have with your partner or partners. And we ask all those questions ahead of time. We actually help people figure out what terminology aligns with them the most. Because oftentimes people think that they're poly because that's like the hot term to be putting out there, but really it's like I want to be able to have hall passes and take on opportunities whenever I travel. So I tell them like, well, it kind of sounds like you want to be more open. You want one person to be your main person, then you want to have sexual experiences outside the relationship, of course, with consent and awareness and enthusiasm involved. But so having that terminology and be able to research and learn about it alone is
long story short, yeah, it's more difficult.
Oh yeah.
Ryan, I love the way you were looking at Victoria when she was speaking.
Because sometimes she likes to go on tangents. She's very passionate, as you can tell, right?
Yeah, but we want the tangent, right? The audience wants to hear the details.
Great.
Yeah, so it's good.
Yeah.
You're smart in that you picked a niche that is so, I mean, it's like we picked a niche 16 years ago. Women for women, right? Lesbians, bisexual. We didn't have the term pansexual, didn't exist, or fluid. But it's like it was so needed, and you found a demographic that is needing this support. And what they need too is like, it comes up in my private practice as a clinical psychologist and coach. that like people don't know how to navigate it well. So I think that they will like the coaching part of not just bringing them together, but like, okay, now you've brought us together. How do we navigate this shit? Because there's so much that's unpredictable, you know?
Yeah.
It's definitely something that we're going to be working on, because a lot of education pieces and
Yes.
just because there's so many questions that we get, just tons of questions like, what do we do? How do we start? Where do we even look? Like how do we do this? It's just
And what do you say to those questions? Like, share with our audience and educate and educate.
So,
Yeah.
well, it helps that we have personal experience. We've been in the lifestyle ourselves for 8 years. So we learn from experiences. We have, we reach into, we hear and learn from other people after all these years. But I've actually created an activity specifically because I had a booth at Exotica, which is an adult expo that has a bunch of sex positive stuff all encompassing it. And I created an activity called Opening a Relationship and in a speaking engagement to pair with it and had over 100 people.
Wow.
And basically with like how to have a conversation about it. And then it's called yes, no, or maybe. And so then I created a list that kind of leans like kinky, a list that leans poly, a list that leans open, and a list that leans swinger lifestyle. And then you fill it out with your partner or yourself. And then you can kind of gauge where you might be leaning and then like be able to have that open and honest conversation with and being able to kind of move from there. So that's kind of how it starts. It's like, what are you interested in? Okay, let's find out where to go and expand on
yeah,
that.
that's definitely the first part, is kind of knowing yourself. Like what do you actually like? What are you looking for? Because a a closed monogamous relationship looks completely different than a polyamorous relationship, and that's complete lifestyle swinging relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot of questions you have to answer yourself first. That's a place I would say to start.
Yeah. And as matchmakers, when people come to you and you take them through this and now they've defined what they're looking for, then what happens?
That's when so I have a dating database full of non-monogamous people. I can either reach into there and interview people that way, which I mean, I take on initial interviews, but if I have more specific questions, like, are you okay with this? What are your thoughts on this? And then kind of move forward from there. But other than that, it's just finding those people, again, interviewing them, asking them what they're okay with or what they're not okay with, and kind of just going from there and reaching into so like there's niches and niches. So like leading into the poly community, if they're leaning poly and going from there and searching people that way. And yeah, so pretty much just interviews upon interviews and searching and getting in the spaces where everyone is and where they talk about. And that's kind of how it starts. Yeah.
How are you finding people for your pool?
There's lots of different avenues on top of just word of mouth, like knowing people in certain areas. There are certain clubs to reach into, learn, like getting in touch with the owners. There's also like platforms like Cassidy. There's platforms like FetLife. There's Instagram that has very specific accounts, for specific relationship dynamics, reaching into them. There's like groups on Facebook. There's literally just like so many different avenues to reach people.
Sorry, my
That's
German Shepherd's
awesome.
trying to pet me here. Need some
But
attention.
most of the time it's through people because that way they're vetted. That way they're recommended. People know that they're real, they're legit, they're good people. And so it's pretty much that networking.
In addition, it depends on the client. So somebody's really into rock climbing.
Mm-hmm.
We'll
Oh,
look
yes.
for people that have those similar interests in addition to the non-monogamous piece. So it
Yeah.
becomes pretty difficult to
Exactly. So
find the
that's
right
kind of
people.
how I go deeper into it. It's like based on their hobbies and interests, I will go into those hobbies and interests and have conversations with those people and see if they're open-minded to it. Like, because oftentimes when I kind of like preface a conversation, I'm like, if you have an open and honest conversation with your partner, you love each other, you're not going to leave each other, would an open relationship appeal to you? Like where you can have those experiences together once that trust and foundation is built. And 99% of the time, they say, yeah, that sounds great. So to imagine like starting off with an open mind and being progressive in that kind of manner, like everyone that appeals to most people that I talk to.
Okay, so I have a crazy question. Have you ever had the experience of having somebody come to you interested in matchmaking for ethical non-monogamy, saying that they're in a relationship where their partner's in agreement, but actually they're going to be cheating?
So, not officially, yes, but one thing that I do to reduce that chance is that if I know they're married or they're poly or open marriage, I interview both people to make sure that they're aware of the services. So there's no doubt, I'm sure I've had people DM me that are like, oh, I'm looking, a lot of times people are looking for play partners, and that's not something that I match. I match people who are relationship oriented. So are people who are trying to cheat reaching out to me? Probably. But I have also layers of protection and contracts and things like that where, like, if you're lying to me about that, like, it's going to be an expensive penalty on their half. But if
Right.
you know, if I know they're all aware, I interview both of them, and at least one interview to make sure that they're all on the same page.
Yeah, I think that's important because, right, if it hasn't happened yet, it will happen, right? Where somebody misrepresents themselves, and then, yeah, I could see that being a hard one. So there's got to be a consequence.
That's also why we do background checks as well, and I do an investigation, and you know, I require social media platforms. So pretty much I do a deep dive myself to just like make sure everything's gravy.
Ah, good, good, good. Oh my gosh, I have so many questions, but I don't want to.
Yeah, keep them
Oh,
coming.
go
Keep them
for it.
coming.
Keep
I'm
them
here for
coming.
it.
That's right.
What comes to mind?
So what do you like when you coordinate a date? What does that look like? What do you recommend? Do you suggest that your clients go to a restaurant, sit down face to face and have conversation, or is it something more adventurous?
So part of the interviewing process is I actually ask the client and the potential database members what kind of dates do they like to go on? Like, do you like the dinner dates? Do you like an activity? Do you want like what appeals to you? And then if they align on certain ways, like sometimes people are good with just a coffee, like, and if they're both okay with coffee, we can do that. If they're both okay with a dinner, we can do that. And then we give them options, and then we coordinate the date that way. And something that I do as a layer of protection and to reduce the feeling of pressure, I don't exchange contacts until both parties mutually agree that they'd like to move forward. So all the
Nice.
dating, all the planning, the reservation, the name, everything is through me. And then they meet in person, they gauge chemistry and conversation in person, and then they can move forward, and either they'll get feedback or they'll be able to exchange contacts and go from there. So personally, just ask, I communicate, like, what do you like to do? Because I want to appeal to both of them. I want it to be an enjoyable time, even if it doesn't move forward, and kind of go from there. And it's based on location and just like cute things. And then and if they both agree, then that's when we make it reservations, make it official, and move forward.
Yeah. And that's good. Do you have any dating rules? Like, we, as matchmakers, we have rules. Of course, we can't enforce them because everyone is adults, but do you have any dating rules? Any suggestions or tips and tools for the date?
Yes. So I actually have a candidate agreement, which is kind of like rules and suggestions on how to be presentable on a date. It talks about hygiene, it talks about etiquette. I do have like the men pay for the date, the first one at least, and ideally, you know, all of them. But you know, I say like I get that kind of out of the way, and then if they happen to be the same gender, then it's the paying client that will go. So I get that kind of covered, so there's no like awkwardness with the bill at the end. Um, and then as far as some do's and don'ts on the date, one thing that I emphasize is that, you know, being non-monogamous can be very sexually charged. Sex can be a very consuming conversation because it is interesting. Everyone, you know, ideally they love it, or mostly for the most time. But I suggest that they don't talk about anything sexual related. I recommend like not really sharing experiences just on the first date, with the caveat I also say like let the women lead with the conversation about sex because it's based on their comfort levels, based on like them feeling safe to open up, and then kind of go from there. Ideally, you don't talk about it, but like I want women to lead that kind of conversation because when they're ready and they feel comfortable, that's when they'll kind of broach the subject. On top of that, do you have any other?
We work with a stylist and stuff as well. So we kind of help them
How to be presentable.
how to be presentable on the first date, like every, you know, dress to impress, and that means different things to different people. So we kind of, you know, have the stylists help them within their style and their budget and everything, kind of look how, you know, presentable, I guess is the best word. So
Also, it's like don't talk about anything negative. You don't want to like talk about
trauma dump on the
yeah,
first
no
date.
trauma dumping on the first date.
I think the biggest rule is the first date is there to help you decide if you want to have a second date. And we give them that mentality and say, hey, don't go into this with any expectations. Just decide if you actually like this person or not.
Yeah,
Like,
almost go to the date unattached so you don't feel the pressure and you feel like more like being yourself because you're not putting so much, you know, like stress into this date. Like just go there, enjoy, have a good conversation, ask questions, share stories, and find out if you guys have things in common. That's like the main thing to figure out on a first date is like, can you see a future and aligning, and like, do we have similar things in that you can do together and move forward?
You show
Yeah.
photos?
Yes, that's based on if the client is okay with that.
Oh,
But
so
generally, yes.
on a case by case basis.
Mhm.
Mhm.
It's so funny. Sometimes I get feedback from clients that somebody showed up on the date looking like they didn't really plan ahead without putting much effort into it. And it's like, really on a first date, there's not much to go on. So it definitely goes a long way to be intentional about making time and effort and being presentable, making it so it looks like you actually put thought into it because you care about the state.
Yeah, no, looks and presentation and a first impression is super important, because if you're giving a low effort energy, it's not going to move forward. People want to feel like they're putting as much energy into it as their person that they're going on a date on. And if they feel like there's a misbalance, like they're going to probably assume that's going to be like that for the rest of the relationship, and that sounds exhausting. And I don't blame them for not wanting to, like, if they're putting in all their effort, they would expect effort from the other person.
Yeah. Yeah. What do you like? How do you measure success in a match?
In which sense? I guess reframe that question a bit.
Yeah. So how would you measure the success rate of a match, right? So is it, so do people, I would imagine that people would come like they come for us. They come and they have, although they want long-term relationships, their long-term relationships may be it's different, right? So some is marriage, some is just long-term, some may be, more companionship oriented. So I'm asking, like, how do you measure the success of a match? Is it
like a period of
what
time?
is it? Yeah,
I'd say that if the client is happy with the relationship that they get at the end of it, right? If they're happy at the end of the service, and if that only lasts 5 months for them, but they were happy at the end of the service, I think that is kind of a winner. Look, obviously we would love it to go forever, like for them, but
I think you want to be with somebody within 4 weeks of knowing them, right? So like if you've gone past the fourth, fifth date, you obviously like this person. To me, that's a success, and that's kind of when you grow deeper from there, because that's when you should be having the harder conversations, are around that point. And it's like, okay, we had these hard conversations, we're still aligned, and then you keep moving forward. I would say, like, as soon as you ask those long-term questions and they align, I feel like that is a success, because that means they were as compatible as could possibly be, because they have all these things in common. And that's why I definitely, part of the reason why it's called birds of feather matchmaking is because I'm trying to make them as similar as possible. There's of course you're not gonna be an exact clone, but like, it's a success if they like each other at any point, right? You put two people that had great conversation, they doing things together, and kind of going from there. And I think that can definitely be gauged, after a fifth date, or if they become exclusive. But I
right.
feel like it could even be a success technically, even if it doesn't become fully exclusive, because it came close, and then it's a success because you still learn from every person moving forward.
our biggest goal is
Ethical non-monogamy, right? So it's like, what differentiates, like, what's exclusive then? The term is exclusivity.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing is putting the right people in front of the client. That's a success for us. Like, it's giving them the option to say, hey, this person really could be somebody that's for you. We want you to try this out, and then hopefully they find the right person out of that. Like, that's the end goal, right? So
So compatible. I guess I'm hearing compatibility, like presenting them with compatible people.
Yes,
that are
That they're interested in learning more about.
Yeah, because just people who have the non-monogamous mindset, that's a whole other ball field. To be able to find someone that has this open-mindedness, and they're connecting with another person who has equally amount of open-mindedness, and having that open and honest communication, like, that's a success in general. Because then you can communicate your wants, needs, desires, and still like each other, and still want to be together, or have like a long term with them. But like, I also, because sometimes people like match And so someone might lean like more poly, or someone might lean more swinger. And it's like, okay, we recognize this. I still want to be with you, but I also want you to have your freedom to be able to do these things, and we come back and be together and then have that conversation. So that's also a success.
So it's harder to gauge like what a successful relationship, or like what the end goal is for a non-monogamous relationship, because like you said there, and like she said, there's so many variations of what those relationships look like. So as long as the person is happy with the other person, I think that's the end goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're married, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So do you get the question often from folks? So like, are you practicing polyamory, ethical non-monogamy?
Yes.
Yeah. So we're not polyamorous per se. I mean, so we would classify ourselves, I suppose, as swingers in the lifestyle. So we don't generally have like, so the big difference between like polyamorous and a swinger is polyamorous is focused on the emotional connection with other people. So for us, we're pretty much emotionally exclusive.
Yes, but when people find out about the niche, they ask us like, are you guys practicing it? Are you in it? And yes, we are, and we are very open about it. We're public about it. And just because we're slowly but surely like normalizing it, and we're letting people know that like the average person could be non-monogamous. It could, like I say, like it could literally be anybody. It's literally just a mindset. And so when people realize it could be their neighbor, it like blows their mind, because they think like there is not the best reputation in general for like the term swinging. People get, you think that they think seedy, they think gross, they think this, but like when they realize someone like us delve into that, their mind is just blown, and then they're like, well, maybe I could be like this. Like, how did you start? And then kind of go like that. So yeah, anytime anybody asks, I'm like, yes, we do. We practice it. We definitely practice what we preach. And I go out in spaces like regular networking events, the matchmaking conference, and I'm happy to share my experiences. And usually it's a really great conversation piece.
So does it ever feel too exposing? Like, so I'm a clinical psychologist, right? Just to give you, right. And it's drilled into our heads all through grad school about boundaries and not, basically maintaining the safe space and keeping my private life very separate and all of this, right? And obviously that was 25 years ago. So now there's social media and like it's really hard to maintain it to that extent. But I imagine like they're like, you're engaging with people who might be like, there's more flexibility around boundaries, or the expectation that there might be, and you're in a position where you either need to be really boundaried or not. So I wonder what your thoughts are about that.
Yes. Initially, I mean, for 99% of people, it's a very private part of their life.
Yeah.
And it was very private for us too. We were in the military, and you're not allowed to be non-monogamous in the military. You can get in trouble for that. And then you can also get in trouble with some careers if you're non-monogamous, because they just think that you're not a capable parent just because of like what you do in your private time. So there's reasons why people don't share it. And there's actually an organization that's working on legalizing these like practices, because they're not as like dangerous as people might think. And so with that, we were private. And then once I wanted to make a business out of this, we became public. I told my parents about it. They are supportive. My best friends, my close, like anyone that I introduced myself, everybody in my life knows exactly, not too many details, but they know that we're in it, and they're totally supportive and happy.
I would say like most of family and whatnot doesn't really ask questions. And if any friends or something ask, like we're happy to share our experiences.
Yeah, I haven't lost any friends over it. I haven't lost any family over it. So those are what's most important to some people. They don't want to lose, they don't want the judgment to end certain things for them, or cause problems, or cause drama. And so in our situation in particular, it has been a non-issue, and that's why we are comfortable being public about it.
And honestly, if anybody did like stop being our friends because of that, I don't think that either one of us would care, just because like we don't need the negativity in our life. So
yeah, that's great that you've gotten a lot of support and acceptance. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So we're very lucky in that regard, but most people aren't comfortable with that. But that's kind of why we're slowly but surely normalizing it, so that it won't be just like a shocking thing that someone could be, especially because like it has been around. the option on Facebook to say you're in an open relationship, and that's been available since forever. And now dating apps are not having the filter for non-monogamy. And what else is there? There's yeah, so there's, I'm trying to think of what other examples are there, but it's pretty much becoming more mainstream. It's becoming more normalized, and that way it won't throw so many people through a loop to tell someone they're into that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's good stuff. There's a dating app, I can't remember, that was really progressive a few years ago and had all of these like options that none of the other ones had. And I'm blanking out on the name right now.
Is it Field?
No, I don't
Mm.
think Field was around when this other app.
Yeah, I think it's
Yeah.
pretty new.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but maybe it'll come to me. Yeah, I'm just envisioning, like, say you're at an event, there's like an event, and you realize, oh, there's a client or two in the room. Maybe it's a swinging event. Like, how would you handle that?
So we don't do anything, like if they're an active client, we don't do anything with them. So there's that. So like that's just that
Yeah.
you know, don't mix business and pleasure, I
Yeah.
suppose. Is,
Yeah.
And
That's
then we also have the option, well, we have NDAs too. So like if the NDAs are signed, we keep that information private as well. So we don't divulge that particular. But I mean, there's definitely have been cases where friends are starting to get recommended. And of course, we have the conversation, we interview them, we keep it very professional. And yeah, we pretty much agreed, like if they're an active client, then they're a client. But of course, they could also be a friend if not during that contract, and whatever that might look like. So definitely have to have professional boundaries if we end up in the same spaces with people that we recognize.
Yeah, I think that's so important.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Right, to create a sense of like safety and privacy, which is such a big part of our business, I think, is to feel like, okay, I'm safe, my information's private.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we also only take on clients that we like. So people that so if we see them in the space, we probably would be happy to see them and continue to build like that friendship with them. But yeah, that's probably, there'd be certain things.
I think
That would be
that's been
okay,
a
not okay.
recurring theme through the series, that we work with people that we like and respect, and yeah.
yeah,
That treat us with kindness.
That
that too.
Our job as matchmakers is hard, and we're in this business not to be rich. I think everybody that I know does it because they're passionate and they're connectors naturally, and they love to help, use that superpower and support their clients and finding people, awesome people, to connect with. So it's important for people to show appreciation and kindness towards us, so that we want to represent them and work hard for them.
Yeah,
So
I feel
definitely that's a theme that comes up for sure.
Absolutely. What challenges come up for you in your role as coaches?
I guess what's the word I'm looking for? The phrase, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it drink, is very apt sometimes, right? Like you can give the best advice in the world, say, hey, this is like, we've talked to your last 3 dates. This is the same thing comes up every time. Don't do this, but if they don't listen, there's nothing you can do about it. So
Yeah.
I think that is one of the main challenges. And then
yeah, and oftentimes, like, part of our coaching is presentation. It's like how you're becoming a better person, how you're looking better. And oftentimes the guys are like, well, they should just take me as I am. Well, so we kind of like, actually a good example was how you're kind of like a house in a way, where it's like you're selling yourself, you're marketing yourself. You want to be presentable. You want someone to look at your pictures and like what they're seeing, but you don't want, dirty laundry or dirty dishes in the sink. You want to look put together like a clean house for them to feel invited and to be in your space, essentially.
Yeah, your house is going to have dirty dishes at some point, right? But what you do with them, putting them in the dishwasher and putting them away is pretty important when you're presenting your house, right? So
yeah,
also trying to get people to step out of their comfort zone and say, hey, I know you don't wear blue all the time, like just give it a try, right? Like it'll make your eyes pop, like it's a thing, just do it. So again,
yeah, and I would also say with our coaching clients is that oftentimes they're very awkward, shy, maybe introverted. And so Ryan's really good about teaching them how to present themselves, kind of like almost like fake it till you make it, like building confidence and how to start conversations and things to talk about, having that like almost like a not a to-do list, but like things to keep in mind when they're in certain spaces.
Not a to-do list, maybe like a checklist of like, hey, just I think the biggest thing is a lot of people are very scared to like make that first introduction, first say something. It's like just it's okay. You're not nobody's gonna get like nobody's gonna kill you for saying hello, right? Like it's all right. Like you can make that first introduction. There's always something to talk about as well.
Yeah.
That's something that I'd like to put forth, where a lot of people say that as well. They don't have anything to talk about. Like asking friends, family, hobbies. There's so many things, like you can go down a rabbit hole on each one of those forever. So
yeah. And then I don't know if you guys, oh, go on, sorry.
Go ahead, Victoria.
I was gonna ask you guys, do you guys often struggle with coaching your female or male clients on who makes the first move? Because a lot of times it's like the women want the men to make the first move, but then the men are afraid to make the first move, and then there's like this like cycle where no one's talking to each other. Do you guys come across that?
For sure. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. I think, especially today, right? Because of Me Too and all of that, men are afraid. We primarily, most of our clients are women, either trans women or cis women. And many times, I mean, many people are afraid of making the first move because they're afraid of being rejected. And they also don't trust their intuition when they're reading somebody to seem interested in having a good time, and that if it feels mutual, if they've been rejected in the past, even one time, and misread the situation, then they're so trepidatious about finding themselves in that same situation again, they don't do it. So we've got to, I mean, it comes up, I don't know, for Denise, I'm assuming that probably for your clients too. It's just, you just kind of have to help them push through that and have a different outcome. And the outcome, it's like the percentage of times that has to happen it's a lot. It can happen one time that you get rejected, and then it's like you have to have 5 positive outcomes to kind of undo that damage.
In the gate. Yeah, right. But it's a muscle, right? So they have to continuously use it. Yeah, they have to build it.
And then the other thing is, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say on the rejection thing. So something that we do too is have people go do things to purposely get rejected and get used to like that feeling of like it's okay to not be accepted at first blush, right? Like it's all right. It's okay.
Or changing the mindset where it's like you hope for the best but expect the worst. So like the worst case scenario, they're gonna reject you. They're gonna say no. They might give you a diss, but that's what you're expecting. So like if it's anything better than that, then you're like, okay, this is a win. So kind of like just like setting expectations.
And what were you gonna say, Dr. Frank?
Of course, now I just forgot it. Oh wait, it'll come back.
I made you lose it.
Yeah, no, it's good. I think it's important for people to know that rejection happens. Oh, this is it. That it's not personal. They don't know them. They're meeting for them for the first time. They may have just spent a few minutes with them, and they're already deciding that they're going to reject them. It's like, you don't know me. It's your loss. So there's a little bit of like, you need to have kind of a Teflon mind around it, where it's like, you just let it roll off. Don't internalize it to mean, because we want to like dig into it and find out, well, why did I say something? We usually assume we said something wrong. We're not cute enough. Maybe we have too many pounds on our bodies right now, whatever kind of, insecurities that we're feeling. And it could be that it has nothing to do with any of those things. It's that person actually isn't really ready or not emotionally available, or a slew of things.
Any number of things.
Right. They scared themselves out of the date, right? That happens a lot. It starts to feel so good, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can't.
You could be perfect for them, and that actually is exactly why they're rejecting you, because they don't feel worthy enough. It's
There's so many scenarios. So it's just like they have to learn to like let it roll off and continue to keep on keeping on.
Totally. Because if you do nothing, you're guaranteed nothing. So might as well do something. That's what I always say.
Yeah, and we have actually a lot of advice with our clients about rejection because that's something that is very common in the swinging lifestyle. Like constantly you're rejecting or getting rejected because not everyone is fit for everyone, or there's like a mismatch in chemistry. There's always something. And but if you let that one experience like ruin it and derail it, then you're not gonna be able to progress and have better experiences in the future because you've got to keep on trying. So having those like examples.
So is communication key in these types of,
It's number one.
Yeah,
It's number one for sure.
Yes.
You have to, because if you hold anything in, you build resentment.
Yeah.
And you have to, like, no matter if it's going to hurt my feelings, his feelings, you have to get it off your chest. You have to talk about it, talk it through, and work through it. Or that's how things get messy. If you hold things back.
I'd say and the quicker you talk about it, the easier it is to get over something. Like, because if you, like you said, if you let it fester, it just becomes a way bigger issue than it could have been. Right?
Yeah.
If it was dealt with right away. So.
Yeah. And then we also preface like with couples too to have grace and be understanding because mistakes will happen unexpectedly because you can have as many conversations as possible, come up with so many different scenarios, and you'll still be surprised. And then if someone's not okay with what happened, like, talk about it later. You have to let them know because if they don't know something's bothering you, it might happen again.
Yep.
So like you have to let them know if any little thing is bothering you and then be able to move forward from there.
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine that these relationships are more authentic, more real, more freeing in some way, right? Where
Absolutely.
yeah.
It doesn't get more authentic than
I had to
opening a
try
relationship to have
this.
sex with other people. Like honestly, like it's the epitome of trust and the epitome of conversation because you've opened that space for you and your partner to have that conversation to get any of those desires, fantasies, anything kind of met with a topic of conversation and be able to move from there. And most people are scared to share things that they're into, fear of judgment or if the partner's going to leave them because of, so like when you have an open-minded partner, like the possibilities are literally endless. And that's like the most valuable thing about a non-monogamous relationship. It's like, you don't have to worry about your partner cheating because they're so confident in you and so open with you that they're going to have that conversation with you before they do something detrimental to the relationship.
I would also add on to that thing is like before being a part of the lifestyle, the most intimate thing you think there is sex. That's not the case at all. It's the way you communicate and you're sharing your hopes and your dreams and your ideals and everything with this person and you're communicating so well with them. That's to me like now the most intimate thing that you can do with somebody.
Being vulnerable is the most intimate thing you can do with somebody.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is so hard, vulnerability. That's my lifelong work for myself. Yeah, it's true that people think the most intimate thing that they can do with somebody is be sexual, but it's
a physical act.
Physical act. Yeah.
I mean, it's fun, it's amazing, it's great, but it's
not the most
intimate thing for me at least. So
have you looked into the science to see if these non-monogamous relationships have a greater survival rate than the quote unquote traditional relationships? Has there been any research?
So I don't know exactly where to lead or where it is, but we've had a friend of ours who's done that research, find that those in non-monogamous relationships survive like 70% more than a monogamous relationship. And usually things start to get wonky around the 7-year mark of a monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
So non-monogamy has a better survival rate compared to monogamy.
And don't quote us on that because I don't know where the research is or where she got that from. But
and then there's also one of my favorite episodes on Netflix is through this series called Explained. And then there's a episode called Monogamy. And basically it's like science-based facts about how humans are terrible at being monogamous. And
I'm writing
it really great
information
on there. So I tell everyone to watch that because it's just like, it's crazy. So, because it's true,
The amount of infidelity that comes up.
That's where I was going to lead.
The next part is like, it's like you probably know somebody that's been cheated
that's what I say.
That's cheated.
That's right.
Or non-monogamy is not uncommon. It's not uncommon because there's unethical non-monogamy.
Yeah.
And that's when either you've cheated, you've been cheated on, or you know someone who has. Like, imagine if they just had that open and honest conversation and gave their partner the option to either work through and be together non-monogamously, or allow them the opportunity to end the relationship because it's not a fit for them. Like, just imagine if people were
Yeah.
just honest with themselves in that kind of
Yeah.
regard. There'd be a lot less heartache in the world.
Yeah, honest with themselves and respectful of their partner,
Yeah.
right? Because it's
And that's
twofold.
number one too, is you have to respect your partner, respect what their comfort levels, their pace, everything like that. Because if you don't have respect for your partner, then it's also not a good fit.
Yeah.
So tell folks how they can find you.
Yes, so there's different ways I can be found. I have a website called birds-of-feather-matchmaking.com. On there, I have a dating database where there's an application. There's also my emails on that site. My email is victoria@birds-of-feather-matchmaking.com. And then my social media platforms are ENM Matchmaker.
Okay. And Ryan, what about you? Same thing? Is there a different?
Same. I'm just tagging along on the coattails here. You know?
Maybe you should start with me,
Yeah.
and then they go to Rai.
Hearing
Yeah.
Victoria say my website. So, but if folks are listening and they want to connect with you, Ryan, for coaching,
Yeah, you can
Reach me first.
You can so on
Victoria.
the website. So we made the
oh,
website. So
so
it has all the
she's in
great.
charge.
Yeah. So for the communications, I tried to make an email for myself. It didn't work. And I built the website, but not the email. It just didn't work.
We're
for me,
very
so
good
just-
communicators, so if you're
Oh,
trying to
good.
reach
That's right.
Ryan, I will make sure of it. You guys will get in touch,
I
and
like it.
I have a Calendly, so there's like links to having a phone call with me that works with everyone's schedule. So I'm very easy to get a hold of.
And can folks get
Amazing.
into a database of yours for free, or tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, my dating database is free to be a part of, and pretty much what I do when people join it, I follow up with a conversation or interview where I learn about them, their preferences, and any additional details, kind of like have them elaborate on questions that were on the application and be able to go from there. So that way I get to know them pretty quickly and I'm able to keep them in mind for future connections.
Okay, awesome. So
Awesome.
glad you could join us.
Yes,
Thank
absolutely.
you for having
You have to
Yeah,
come
thank you
back
for
for
having us.
sure. There's got to
Would
be a
love
part
to.
two.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I've
Yeah, there's
so many
a lot to be
questions.
said around love and non-monogamy and matchmaking alone. So we
Yeah,
love it.
awesome. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next time. Kisses, hugs. Take care, everyone.
Bye.